it's time for a chat with Pat.
Yeah, and today we have with us Carl Trueman. He is a professor of biblical and religious studies at Grove City College and a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. We're talking about an article he wrote for First Things. And Carl, welcome. And I had to read it once I saw the title. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, Pat, and yourself?
Good. Okay, this title, just like I couldn't believe it. No, infant baptism is not abuse. I was just like, I couldn't believe that somebody would actually write thinking that infant baptism is abuse. But I want to get us to what actually brings us to a point where somebody even thinks that. What's going on here?
Well, of course, it wasn't simply what was said. It was the person saying it. It
Yes.
was Mary McAleese, who is the former president of Ireland and a trained canon lawyer, I believe, in the
Yes.
Catholic Church. And she wrote this article where she described infant baptism as, quotes, a long-standing, systemic and overlooked severe restriction on children's rights with regard to religion. And yes, why did she write it? One can only speculate. But one of the things that comes to my mind is, victimhood is virtue these days. Everybody wants to claim the title. And of course, if you can claim that you were victimized by a ritual that you don't even have a recollection of as an adult, it involves significant grade inflation, but also opens up the possibility of being a victim to you and gaining that status in society.
So, and you talk about kind of a moral disorientation. What do you think that kind of brings this kind of thinking about? What causes and what is? How do you define moral disorientation?
Yeah, well, I think we live at a strange time. We live in a time where, because of the internet and social media, we are in some ways we're able to be everywhere and see everything. And yet to have nowhere fixed or firm to stand. And I think one of the results of that is it has led to this catastrophic scrambling of any kind of moral hierarchy. I mean, the irony of Mary McAleese was she was writing this thing at the very moment where thousands are being massacred in Iran. The fact that, infant baptism is the major moral concern rather than the slaughter that was going on in the streets of Iran speaks volumes about I think the anarchic nature of the moral hierarchy today. We see everything, but we have no framework with which to understand what is more and what is less important.
Yeah, that's very true. So give us some insight. What is she thinking when she says, what does she write about when she says that this is abuse, infant baptism?
Well, she has a sort of eclectic view of baptism, should we say. She likes what she sees as the spiritual benefits, the expunging of original sin and the opening up of the flow of God's grace. She's very much in favor of those things. What she objects to is that it implies that the recipient of infant baptism has some lifelong membership of the church, which, of course, in Catholic theology is where she would receive ongoing benefits. She objects to this idea that a sort of lifelong membership is imposed upon the child, that it pushes objective responsibilities upon the child over which the child has no choice. One of the points I make in the article, of course, is, hey, this is the 21st century. The church can claim you as a member, but you can go off and do whatever you want.
Right.
Nobody's being sent to prison for breaking their baptismal obligations.
I was kind of amazed by that statement too on her part, because I thought the same thing. Well, that you can always choose. I mean, just because you're baptized, it doesn't mean you're going to be Catholic your whole life. We hope you are, but you may choose to leave. And she just does she ignore that whole thing in her writings on this?
I think so. I mean, I think that's an inconvenient truth, if you like, that she doesn't want to wrestle with. I'm a Protestant, and I provocatively say in the article, that today Catholics are Protestants on the grounds that everybody chooses to continue. You're a Catholic, but you've chosen to continue being a Catholic. You wouldn't have had to do that in the 12th or 13th century. that would have been a much more powerful context for the church to operate in. But I mean, she'll even say, nothing else was to shape my life so powerfully or impose such formidable restrictions on my inalienable intellectual human rights as that brief Sunday baptism ceremony 7.5 decades ago.
Wow.
When I read that, I thought it was satire. I mean, that's incredible that nothing else has shaped her life so powerfully.
Yeah.
And as far as I can make out, she's done rather well out of being a dissident Catholic.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that has made her a prominent public figure, if you like. So,
and I would question what the powerful influence was. Because, obviously she, you wrote that she is in favor of abortion. She's in favor of, all the things, a lot of these social issues that we are talking about in our churches being, like transgenders and those kinds of things, that there's something wrong here. And she seems to support all that. So my question is, how did baptism have such a powerful effect on her? Like, does she say?
Yeah.
At all?
No.
No. Okay.
She doesn't really elaborate on that.
Okay.
And I think, some of us reading the article were sort of wishing that it had had a more powerful effect upon her than it actually appears to have done.
Exactly.
Quite remarkable.
Wow. And I think it's interesting, too, because you talk about the idea that she stays within the church and yet has all these issues with the church. And we do have lots of people like that within the church, right? So how do we, I guess I'm asking your opinion here, is the idea of how do we kind of, how do we know when it's time to leave? Because I've had people say to me, well, I stay in the church because I think it needs to change, and I'm going to be the change agent.
Yeah.
How do you respond? Because you're outside looking in to the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I mean, the way I sort of framed that question in the article was very much a sort of, if the hierarchy were more like she seems to think they are, that'd actually be less of a problem. Because they could, I think it's up to the bishops in a sense to decide, who is beyond the pale. I think of Archbishop Cordileone a few years ago, letting Nancy Pelosi know that he would no longer serve her communion after many years of trying to persuade her of a better way of thinking and a more faithful and obedient way of being a Catholic. Mm-hmm. So there's a sense in which her article, the very fact that she can write her article, would indicate that the oppression that she claims is there is not there at all. And in actual fact, the church, I think, would be a healthier place if there was a bit more of it.
That's an interesting thing. We have these conversations all the time. Carl, thank you so much for writing this article because, boy, I did not know there was somebody out there that thought infant baptism was abuse. So thanks again for being with us. Take care, Carl. Have a good weekend.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.